Yeah, it's amazing to think, can you believe 1 year living in this new chapter as Bridge Church together? Really grateful, really excited for all that is to come. And if you're curious about what this means, is I just want to recenter something. We're really about Jesus and we're really about people. We're really about connecting real people to the real Jesus in the ways that sometimes challenge us, but they wake us up to what life is about and what's real and meaningful. And I want you to look around for a moment, and I want you to think about that this room right now is maybe the emptiest it will be. Not because it's about growth or filling more seats, but because it is about seeing Jesus connect with so many people through our lives that our community is transformed. Really, community is transformed. And not just in this space, but in the places that you live, work, and you play. What if your life was like an on-ramp to the life that is Jesus over and over and over again? And we get to come together and live that out in the beauty of what he's calling us to. And so I'm excited. The vision is about Jesus. It's about people. It's about reality. And it's about living that out and creating safe spaces of belonging on a journey of believing and becoming like Jesus. So I'm excited to be part of that with you. Are you excited to be part of that together? Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So lean in. Now is not the time to sit back. Now is time to lean in that all God is doing it. And one of the ways that we get to lean into this together is to just continue in this series through Ephesians. And I think that what we have on the docket today so harmoniously comes together and what Bridge Church, we together are all about. And so you can have another break from me. Mike McClure is going to hop on up, and he is going to read our text from Ephesians 4, verse 17 through 24. It's really part of our text from last week. So would you stand up as we read this text together? Mike, thank you.
So I tell you this and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their thinking. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, they have given themselves over to sensuality so as to indulge in every kind of impurity, and they are full of greed. That, however, is not the way of life you learned when you heard about Christ and when you were taught in him in accordance with the truth that is in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You all can have a seat. I love that my kind of joke of an Easter jacket made it into the video several times. I may have to bring that thing back out. Hey, here's a bit of a roadmap of where we're going through this text for today. I'm going to talk about a problem that most of us seem to struggle with or know someone that struggles with. And then I'm going to offer a solution through the way of the Jesus. It's going to be abundantly simple but powerfully the power of the possibility that is in this could be life-changing. So, and I don't mean that in a hype way. I mean, there is some real-life stuff that is in this text that is in front of us today. So, first, an admission, though. This is the admission, real transparent moment for you. My nights are no longer what they used to be. And it's not because I have 3 kids. It is now because I have reached that moment of life where my bladder is louder than the voice of my subconscious most nights, waking me up from the depths of my depraved sleep, my joyful sleep, in between the moments of interruption. My bladder has a newfound voice in my life that I didn't know it was possible to have. Does anyone else have that voice alive in your, I thought I had longer, and I am not okay with this new reality. And all of this became a little more complicated the last few days, and here's why. Eliza and I went to the Bridgeport area to spend a couple days with her sister while she's on maternity leave and before all that ends. And our sleeping quarters were in their basement. And this is a nice basement, a very large basement. A basement that doubles as, all of the storage stuff that you don't really want, also as like a playroom and a workshop with tools. And it was very, very large, and it was very, very dark. But most importantly about this basement, you can imagine, it did not have a potty. It did not have a potty for Daddy. And so each night, inevitably when the bladder woke me up from my slumber, I found myself in like this existential basement to main floor pilgrimage to this bathroom that was so close yet so far away, because what I was navigating was not just darkness, but I was navigating 3 sleeping children, 2 of whom can be woken up by breathing. And they are laying on the floor in an unfamiliar room with stuff everywhere. And I kid you not, you know the scene in Home Alone where they throw the Legos out? Like, I don't know where these things came from, but tripped up, painful, and I'm trying not to scream, and I'm trying not to fall. And the only North Star in this pilgrimage of existential bathroom seeking was the small sliver of light that was peeking from beneath the main floor door and cascading its way very dimly down the loud creaking wood basement stairs and onto the landing, but not into the abyss, just enough to see it in the distance, but have to meander about in the dark pilgrimage of the night to get to this bladder response moment. And guys, I made it, but it was brutal. And that, my friends, I think is a little bit what it feels like to follow Jesus. A journey stumbling through the dark on some existential pilgrimage towards a destination that seems so far away and is subtle, if ever, to arrive. Let me come at it this way. I really believe this, and I'm going to prop you up for a moment. You ready for this? If you came in feeling like doubtful and a little like less than, I'm going to throw you some props this morning. And it's this. I really believe that in the room and in the community that God is forming us to be, like, we are full of some of the most capable, talented, intelligent, gifted, passionate, intense, humble, caring, curious, compassionate, loving people that I've ever been around. Like, that's you. I'm talking about y'all, like in a real nice way. You're welcome. But yet, despite all of that being true about us, time and time again, let's have the reality check. In story after story, week after week, day to day, sometimes hour to hour, we still seem to hit the same walls and the same obstacles and the same barriers and the same ceilings as anyone else, whether that's a person of faith or not, and even as your former self, that like pre-Jesus self, or that I just got like into the faith thing. Gifted and talented or not, intelligent and capable or not, even Christian or not, I've seen your frustration, I've felt your frustration, I hear your frustration, and I'm living the same frustration. Where even though you have faith, even though you believe in God, and even though you've trusted your life to Jesus, and even though you constantly and consistently come to church, you seem to have the same obstacles, the same barriers, the same struggles as you did when you first became a follower of Jesus. Anyone else feel that tension? And I think many of us came into this faith thing thinking that it would just immediately change everything. Like Elon Musk was going to do what he's doing to the self-driving cars out there. Commit to life in Jesus, change the operating system, and life would be easy and smooth sailing from that point. And all the things about us that struggle and need healing and need growth and need life, like that would just take care of itself because we've maybe said a magical prayer or responded, and we've got this belief statement now in our heads. But it doesn't seem like that is what's happening for many of us, is it? You see, I think we come into this faith thing sometimes looking for this radical, immediate shift. And it doesn't often happen that way. And maybe you came in today struggling to connect the dots between who you want to become and who you are actually becoming. And you look at your marriage and you're like, we still seem to have the same stuff going on every week, every month, year after year after year. But I'm showing up and I'm a person of faith. Why is that? Or I'm having things in my friendships and I just can't seem to have long-term friendships. I can't figure this out, and the common denominator seems to be something about me, but yet I keep showing up. And I'm part of church and I'm a Christian and I'm doing my studies, but I don't seem to actually be changing. And I'm struggling with my attitude towards people because people get under my skin so fast. And I'm all wrapped up in the politics of the day, and I'm all wrapped up in whether my kids getting the right amount of playing time or not. And I'm just all being strung out and tugged about in life, struggling, meandering through the dark when I thought that it was going to be different. Maybe you see the light at the top of the stairs, but life still feels like the same journey stumbling through the dark. And if that's your reality, and maybe you need to think about that and say, well, that might be my reality, but I think I've also done a good job of ignoring that reality. I'll take my stumbling through the dark because it's familiar and comfortable. But if that's your reality, I want to lay out some good news to you this morning. You ready for some good news now? Jesus can turn the lights on. And he can change your life. And he may never change your circumstances, but he can change you in the circumstances. He can give you a roadmap through the dark where all of a sudden you start finding more and more light in the midst of the stumbling about through the basement darkness. And maybe just maybe you quit sleeping in the basement anyways and you take up residence in that master suite, y'all. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what the master suite is in your soul, but you know what it is for you. And the question is I like that idea, Matt. Nice setup. Bladder joke, hilarious. But how? Because I've been doing this Christian thing for a long time. Or I'm really curious to be I'm even showing up this morning and I'm looking for something that might be real and connected to my life, and I'm in a room with people that I hope are connecting those dots, and I'm just sitting back ready to watch. Is this actually real? Not at the level of what I identify as a Christian or the beliefs in my head, but is this real enough to not just stamp an insurance ticket for your soul into eternity, but make no difference in the here and now? Is this thing actually so real that it can transform how I view people? That the people that I'm angry at right now, all of a sudden my heart just can't help but to give mercy and compassion towards them. And the argument that I keep having with my spouse begins to stop because I get that soul check that says, stop, man. This isn't the moment. Wait. Learn your spouse. Change. Serve. Humble yourself. Or that moment late at night and you're scrolling on TikTok or Instagram or whatever's going on in your browser, and the temptation is to go one step further, and the algorithm is just showing it at you over and over again. There's a check that says, this isn't who I am. This isn't who I am. And your life begins to transform. And in our text, Paul's actually giving us a guide to that sort of life. That's out of the dark. It's not based in illusion. It's not based in something that is pie in the sky or religious checkboxing or just show up. It is about real life intersection points between who Jesus says you are and who you are becoming with your life. Jesus can change you. He can change you. And what I mean by that is not just we're going to have the moment where everyone raises a hand and recommits or commits for the first time to Jesus. And those could be powerful and they are real. But what I'm talking about, that's not most of our steps. Next step. It's about learning to embrace the slow daily grind of becoming more like Jesus. It's about embracing this thing that there are thoughts in your brain that are destroying your life and Jesus wants to change them. There are old patterns of thinking, things that you keep putting on, like wearing a heavy winter coat in a 90-degree summer day, only because that's the way you thought it's supposed to be and it's most comfortable. There is a way that God wants to change you. And I want to say this not as a theological statement about salvation, but just a reality check. For any of that to happen, can we start with this very obvious principle of how change works? Because if we're going to become more like Jesus, we have to embrace that, that means we change, and we participate in that. But to change, you must decide to change. Hold on, what? Wait a second. But I did that when I was 8 and I got baptized. I'm changed. And that's great. It's great. I am pro that, believe me. But then from then, the life of a follower of Jesus is not to become more Christian, it's to become more like Jesus. And sometimes we got to decide to change. For those of you following Jesus, sometimes we're tempted to think that the Christian life is just based on that one decision and that one magical prayer. As good and important as those things are, but it's just not the truth. To change, you must decide to change over and over and over and over and over again. And here's what's crazy about reality and how your brain works, and literally your body, theology, science, psychology, all of it coming together. Guess what? Today, you will be different by the time you go to bed than you were when you woke up this morning. You're changing every day anyways. The question is, who's guiding that process? To what end? Am I being intentional about it, or am I going with the flow like a raft in a river, banging off rocks over and over and over? Or am I getting a guide, and I'm sticking the oar in the water, and I'm working in tandem with a community and I'm team, and I'm navigating the channels that are life and becoming more like Jesus? We are in the river of life, whether we think we are or not. Got to decide to change. There's these 2 young fish, little fish parable. You like this? There's these 2 young fish. They're swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the 2 young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually they look at the other one, and the other one goes, "What the heck is water?" Think about it. Here's my point. Like the 2 young fish, most of us need to make the decisive change. But we don't make the change because we can't see the life we're living. What's the water? We can't see the life we're actually living. Henry Miller says it this way: one's destination is never a place, but it's a new way of seeing things. When I was going on my bladder pilgrimage over and over and over again to the same destination, all I needed was a new way to see the dark. It was the same end goal every time. Same destination. Some nights were brutal. Some nights there were words that slipped out when I stepped on things that I had to ask for forgiveness for. There were moments, because really I was just a sweaty mess, like, am I going to wake the kids up? I don't want to be woken up by a bladder and babies. That's the double-edged sword, bladder and babies. Jesus, take the wheel. One's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. And Paul calls this caught up in a life of futility. Everyone say futility. Futility. Unable to see, darkened, and callous, hardening of our hearts, separated from the life of God. And that's a really interesting turn of phrase to me. Separated from the life of God. Talking to Gentiles, who he says, don't be like Gentiles, meaning like there's something God is making new in you. You're no longer, that's not your primary identity, that's not who you are, but is that shaping who you're becoming? And you're quote unquote like a believer, but you're separated from the life of God. What's he getting at? I find that really interesting. And I think through modern ears, it would be something like this, that the disconnect between a belief in God and a life with God. The disconnect between salvation as a entry point moment that's decisive for all of history, but disconnected through like deciding to change, put new rhythms, practices, apply things in my life that make me transform and heal me and make me more meaningful and more purposeful in the daily lived life. And sadly, and for a lot of reasons, I think we bought into a bad idea that says Christianity is primarily about the conversion of our souls, but not the transformation of our lives. Don't separate them. It is a both and where those lines are, I don't know. God will sort it out in the end. It is about both. He saves us and he's saving us all the time, forever. It's mysterious. None of us got a great grip on it, let's be honest. But he is inviting us into whole life transformation from here and now into eternity. And then he says, your transformed lives, you are the thing that I need to help bring more transformation in the world around you. Bridge Church. The future of Bridge Church is not based on anything other than are we becoming more like Jesus? And as we become more like Jesus, as a family, as a community, through the hard knocks of life, through our participation, and through the power of the Spirit, are we inviting other people into that journey with us? Is that leading to loving people? Is it leading to including the marginalized? Is it including to doing the hard work of the Jesus stuff? Let me try to say this really, really plainly. Jesus never invited people to convert to Christianity. He didn't even call people to become Christians. He invited people to become his followers. That's different. Those are profoundly different things. When you think about what it means to be a Christian, what do you think about? And is it primarily a relational thing with following Jesus, or is it a performative thing of cultural box checking in a localized version of being a Christian? Make sense? There's something in this that is the key to how we turn the lights on and move beyond the daily grind of struggle and hitting the same wall, having the same fight, and wrestling with the same things, and moving past the things into life, what Jesus called life, and life to the full. So the question is, how do you transform? How do you come out of the dark? How do you let go of your futility? How do you regain your sensitivity to God? How do you quit living in illusion and frustration colliding with the same struggles? Well, verse 20, Paul really starts getting after it. He says, but that is not the way you learned Jesus. All that stuff I just said, that is not the way you learned Jesus. And I got to pause here really fast again. And I want you to see something. What did he say that you learned? A person. That is not the way you learned Jesus. I need you to see that to follow Jesus is to learn a person first, before it's to learn a bunch of ideas about a person, or the constructs we've created in our best attempts and sometimes bad intention attempts to box him in. This is a relational thing, not a performative thing. Transformation only happens at the level of relationship and not at the level of performance or even conformity. So it begs a question. How do you learn a person? How do you learn a person? You got some friends in your life? How do you learn them? You have a spouse in your life? How did you learn them? How did you earn the ability to drop that question to the person that you're like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you? I'm assuming you learned some things about them first before you're like, I just believe in marriage. And so you were the first person I got attracted to, and you seemed like the best of the worst options that were in front of me to fit my timeline. Let's just give this a shot. No. If you did that, man, God bless. No, you learned the person. Time, proximity. Time and proximity. Isn't it that simple? Why is it anything else when it comes to being a follower of Jesus? Time with Jesus and proximity to Jesus. Time with Jesus, time with his people. Proximity to Jesus, proximity with his people. I believe in exercise more than I put it into practice in my life. I believe in healthy eating habits more than I put it into practice in my life. I believe in community more than I put it into practice in my life. I believe that I want my children to have healthy rhythms of life. And so one of the things we do, because I know exercise is good, I know nutrition is valuable, is we take family walks. Now, here's what I do not do in our family walks. I do not look at my kids and say, girls, it's time to get our exercise. Go walk the neighborhoods and watch out for the cars. See you in 20 minutes. Put your Fitbit on and make sure you get 1,000 steps this fast with your little legs. That is not what I do. I do not do that at all. I, as their dad, love them. And I just want to be with them. So we go on family walks together. And I guide and I guard them from cars and from dogs and people, and they make friends, and it's an amazing. And you know what? Like the long-range byproduct of just a family walk where we are together in the chaos of our schedules, where we are going to White Pines behind our, you know what the byproduct way down the line that's at the surface of the deeper motive of time and proximity and relationship is? They got some exercise. See, the transformed life will never come by just taking walks so that you get healthy. The transformed life comes when you just want to be with your dad. And by being with them, he changes you. And he changes your motives and he changes your desires. And you know what I don't have to do anymore? Is say, girls, you want to go on a walk? They are asking to go on walks every evening. That's a powerful metaphor for what it is to, that's not what you heard when you learned Jesus. Jesus teaches us a new reality, which means that this journey is so deeply relational. And so as we live and walk with Jesus, what are we taught? Paul names 3 things. I'm going to do 2 out of the 3 today. He says 3 things. 1, you have to change from the inside out, put off your old self. 2, you have to do that by changing the way you think through the renewal of your mind. And 3, you are to be completely, this is Keller's language on this last one, I love. You are to be completely captivated by Jesus, which is put on that new self. Paul is giving us a training program for our interior world in how we become more like Jesus and get the lights turned on. So let's unpack that. Number 1, change from the inside out. Put off your old self. I want to make a key distinction here. Like, this is one of those messages, if you've grown up in church, you've heard it. You could probably come up and do this message, right? Put off the old self, change the way you think, put on the new self. Everyone has a different metaphor. Everyone applies it differently. Like, you could come do this message. I want to take a crack at it this way. And I want you to see that far before the old self is at the level of our behavior, it's about something way deeper, way more core. So what is he talking about, the old self? Is it, well, quit being a lying person, because he's going to say that in a couple of verses. That'll be in a couple of weeks. No. It's like, let go of your old life. Let go of your old sense of who you were. Quit striving to earn for yourself what God has now freely given you. Don't live condemned. Live as God's beloved child. Chapters 1 through 3, you've been saved. You were dead in your sins, and he has woken you up to life, and you are a transformed person. You are a child of God. Put away the other stuff, man. Quit living the compartmentalized thing. And put off the old self. It means your identity has gone on with that. And then he has this really interesting phrase. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is, so he's defining it, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. Deceitful desires. God gives us so many good desires. The problem isn't the desire. The problem is that they can trick us. They can trick us into thinking that if I have more of this, then that will fill the void in my life. Money is an okay desire. The question isn't how much. The question is why? For what purpose? To what end? For the sake of who? God gives us a desire to eat and eat good food. Good food. Jesus, thank you for good food. Like a new restaurants, bring more businesses to Putnam County. Like, Good food. Let's walk on that thought. Get it? That's a play on words. Walked. I'm a little extra free today, and I don't know why. It's because I started a new steroid inhaler, and my lungs are starting to work again, and it hops me up in the morning, guys. That or the spirit, I don't know, but so we're clearly not getting all the way through today. But listen, you have desires. You have desires. Problem is they deceive us. If my desire to be Sydney's soccer coach was based in earning a reputation as a good soccer coach by the way we win games, listen, I'd be struggling on the inside because my team, y'all, we are the worst. I don't know how else to say it. Coach Elias with me, we are the worst. Like by far. There's not such thing as a 10-run rule in soccer, but I think they've invented one for us. It is bad. And I could tell you some stories. But legitimately, what if I came into this as a coach with a gap in my soul that said, only when these 4- and 5-year-olds perform in a way that makes me look good, then I will be someone. Then I will have value. Then I will have worth. Then I will have meaning. And that's a silly example, but we do that in our lives with careers, with people, with chasing our own definitions of success, with our social status, and with all the things. And those are okay desires, but they deceive us and they get distorted. And the more we do it, Paul would say we get hardened to what it's doing to us. And we develop calluses in our soul that make us lose the sensitivity to the destruction that's happening in us and ultimately through us, which is really bad. And we just keep walking around in the dark basement of life, existentially struggling and stepping on the same landmines. And most of us do it while at the surface we still look super Christian. And this is the paradox. Because Jesus never invited us to anything other than relational apprenticeship with him that changes us from the inside out. And so we have to put off the old stuff. And it starts with saying, God, I don't believe you yet. But I really am trying to buy into who you say I am. And I'm going to try to live that out. What? How do you do that? He says, number 2, you have to change the way you think. Change the way you think. I'm a casualty of, can I make a real social statement? Yes, Matt, that's great. Cool. You love your steroids. You know what a casualty is of the way we've done church in the modern West, in particular in our area for a while? Is that we're like, ooh, change the way you think. Sounds a little not spiritual. Sounds a little yogi. Sounds a little Eastern. Where was Jesus from? The global East. Christianity is an Eastern religion. And Paul never separates who you are with how you live and how you think. It's all one big thing that makes up this mind-body complex that is you and your chaos. If your life is going to change, say it this simply. You must change the way you think. You must change the way you think. Starting with what? Who you are. And then what's possible out of that. Getting brave. Can you throw the picture? I gave you like 17 possible endings today because I've struggled with how to land this plane all week. Mess. Chaos. And I think it's for good reason because I'm pretty solid on how I want to do it right now. Can you throw the picture up of the municipal auditorium? Have you ever been to the municipal auditorium? Yeah. How many of you have been there recently? Yeah, this picture's great compared to what it looks like right now. We were there last Sunday for an event, and it was an interesting experience. I hadn't been in there in a while, and there are like giant spots of paint just falling off the ground, falling off the walls, the bathrooms. Whew. I did, because of my bladder, because of that, have the opportunity to use the restroom beside Landau Eugene Murphy. So that was a moment. So maybe that's God's providence in this new bladder thing. It's like, hey man, love the way you're singing as we're standing there relieving ourselves. That's literally what I said, because I am that uncool. Hey man, love the way you sing. And he just looked at me, yeah, thank you. Anyways, and then we act like that didn't happen and we walk back upstairs. But the municipal auditorium is an experience. And so the show we were at is like this globally famous dude, like millions of followers, Netflix specials, an amazing, amazing talent coming straight from Hollywood, global fame. And then you put this person in what I'd say is like our least nice auditorium in the entire area, with paint chipping and rusted bathrooms, and kind of like, this is a little embarrassing. This is what we put on offer. And I'm sitting there like, because my brain never shuts up. And I'm sitting there trying to enjoy the show, and all I can think about is like, oh God, like that's the same curtain from 60 years ago. When was the last time that was dusted? Is that why I can't breathe right now? Like why can't we paint? We just renovated the Civic Center. Can we not paint that wall? It's owned by the same people. Like, come on. And I saw the mayor. I just want to be like, yo, I don't care about any of the other issues. Paint this wall. I can't concentrate. And ironically, providentially, spiritually, whatever, in the same week, all of a sudden, people are sending me videos and pictures of this new arena out in Vegas called the Sphere. Has anyone seen this thing? You're nodding. Yes, it is amazing. Yeah, that was my attempt to screenshot things late last night to make a picture out. U2 is in this residency. It looks like something out of the Hunger Games. It is a giant orbing LED show. And I mean, is that tripping you out? Is that like to think about this stadium? And that all that wall is a giant screen, immersive screen that goes up and over and around you. It will give you vertigo. And U2 is way down on that tiny stage performing a show. Look at that. I mean, that's the scale of this thing. Go look it up. It's incredible. And I had this thought about the old self and the way we think and putting on the new self. And I want to say this. Christianity has made so many of us settle for a life that thinks the municipal auditorium is as good as it gets. Think about it. There is life and life to the full. And this is a man-made structure. Imagine what God can produce in you and through you that has His power and His kingdom working through you and working through this church. Will we settle for the old self that is like thinking that the municipal auditorium is as good as it gets? Will we just ignore the paint chipping off of walls? Will we never replace the bathrooms? And will we continue to embarrass the already fragile name of West Virginia by bringing people into this room? Or will we build something new with our lives? Will we let God change who we are so that what we have to offer is the most visually stunning view of who God is, that is not based in anything other than this is who God is changing me to be? And when the LED screen doesn't work because there's bits of our life that are broken, people might even love the fact that display is broken over here, but over time, in relationship with you, they see the lights come on. And all of a sudden, this starts as like a small construction project, and the lights seem on back order, and it only works in black and white for a while, and then all of a sudden, the pieces start to come together. And you know what else happens? Is the more we become a church together, I tie my screen to your screen and your screen to another screen, and all of a sudden there is an unignorable reality about our life together that this pales in comparison to. Stop stumbling through the basement life of existence because you've settled for municipal auditorium life. Step into the newness of life What is Paul saying? He wants to make you new. Put off the old self. Change the way you think. And this is the invitation today. We're not going to sing. I'm actually going to ask you to do something different. But this is the invitation. And I think it goes all the way back to that tent. And I try not to cry again. Most of us don't believe that's possible for us because you don't think you're lovable. And you don't think you're loved. And you think you've screwed up your life so much that it's beyond repair. But can I tell you, in Jesus, he's already settled that. That is the power of Jesus over sin and grave. It's the power of Jesus over the darkening of your hearts and the callousness of your life. Jesus actually can change you. And he doesn't do it to people he doesn't like so he looks better. Does it because he just loves you. And he never gives up on you. And what he wants to turn you into is this. For the sake of the world. For the sake of the world. How would your life look if you just invited God into the pieces of you that he longs to be in? And said, Jesus, change me from the inside out. I am sick of performing for you. Would you just change me and love me? And I will show up. I will do my best to show up every day. And wherever I can't, Jesus, would you meet me there? And somehow, Jesus, I don't even like me very much. And I don't feel like my wife listens to me or my husband listens to me. I don't feel like a good parent, but somehow you still think that you want to use me for the sake of other people. So do that. So what would happen when we join our lives together in that pursuit? The future gets to be defined by things we can't even think of. Because that's Jesus. That's the Jesus stuff. So how? How do we put this into practice? Let's start with this. Here's what I invite you to do. I don't want you to reflect. We're not going to do our moment. Here's what we're going to do. Stand up. Go to the lobby. Celebrate our 1 year. And share some stories with each other. Meet some people. Make a friend. Join your screen to their screen. And let's start creating a life together as a community where Jesus changes us from the inside out for the sake of the literal world. Seal the deal, Jesus.